This is JD Hagler. We're going to talk about making holes today. You can see I've got 6 of them here. There's 4 actual different ones that I've got casted here. I've got a pair of slopers here. I've got these 2, whatever they are, and I've got a nice jug hold here, and then just really a foothold or a pinch if you're set or hasty, I guess. Kind of the same here. These are really just footholds that I used to make sure I was able to do this, and these 3 are the ones I've made more recently. The carabiner is just in there for scale. The local gearhead outfitter started carrying them recently, and I've been trying to support that local endeavor. But it's nice, everybody knows what a carabiner is, so we can use that to show you how big these things actually are. A lot of people are looking at making holes for their home gym, or that's about it. We're making ours for the local gym, but we're just doing it for kicks and giggles, really. Most people are looking to get into it as a cost-effective way to save money on buying their own holds, getting into some of the more expensive stuff for whatever they're bouldering around in their garage. So we're going to cover that today. We're going to talk about what it takes to. There's going to be 3 different things. We've got to sculpt them. We have to cast them. We have to cast the mold itself, and then we have to cast the part itself. We're going to sculpt them out of dry floral foam. There's 2 types of this green foam out there. One is for holding fresh flowers, and it's really soft, pliable, mushy nonsense. And the other is this dry floral foam that I just pointed out. That's for plastic flowers. And the natural texture of the foam will actually give us what we're looking for as far as the texture on this stone. I've added some of this detail that you can see all through here, but just the actual texture of the rock itself is straight up from the foam. So I would like to experiment with some higher density foams later on, but for right now the floral foam is working just fine. So the big question to ask before you really get into this is is this cost effective for you to do? I'm about $100 in right now, at least. But I started with all the tools I really needed to get going. So I have a drill press, which you only need for just the hole. I already have a Dremel that I do all the sanding with. I already owned all like this incidental stuff like sandpaper and brushes and workspace and things like that. I already owned most of it, so it wasn't that hard to throw together. I even had the casting supplies, so it wasn't that hard to throw it together and get going. And then once I figured out what I was doing, I was able to just buy more casting supplies and roll with it. So I've got, this is the material we're using to cast with. It's a nice high strength silicone stuff. There's a lot of different ways out there to cast. This has been the most reliable one that I've seen. I'm not a fan of the 3D printing. That lighting is killing this thing. I'm not a fan of the 3D printing. I want to be able to lay hands on the hole as you're sculpting it. I'm not a fan of some of the other stuff I've seen out there. Wood grips are okay, but I've seen some really weird ways to make molds and ways to cast things and ways to make Bondo work for you. And I think it's really not that difficult to make your own hold and cast it. It's just a matter of getting through the first stumbling blocks. I've probably lost 40 or 50 bucks in just mess ups. And so this video is here to try and walk you through those, and hopefully your first hold will be a usable one. Whereas my first mold broke on me after the first casting. So I got 2 perfectly good holds out of it, but the mold was gone, and that's where most of the work in. Most of what we're going to talk about is making sure this right here is right. If this is right, everything else is gravy. Everything else will come out, and you'll be able to pop out hold after hold after hold from the same one if this is done correctly. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to move into sculpting one of these out of that green floral foam, and then we're going to pour some silicone around it. And then we're going to start casting these. And we'll talk about the products we use, the reasons we use them, and hopefully we'll set a route with all this stuff when it's all said and done. So next up, we're going to start sculpting. Alright, so getting into sculpting. Start with a block of foam. Alright. Dry floral foam, pick it up from a local hobby store. Maybe a florist has it, probably would have it. Super cheap, easily the cheapest part of this whole process. You're going to need a small saw to cut the basic shape with. Nothing crazy. Again, local hobby store. Maybe you have one already, probably. I've got 2 different sandpaper textures here, but I could probably do 99% of it, if not, I mean, I probably can do all of it with the the rougher texture. I've got some of this here for a little bit finer texture, but this really just does most of it. I don't even know if I need this. So, but I definitely have a grain on it, 80 grain maybe. Just a real aggressive sandpaper, should work fine. And then for fine tuning, I've got this Dremel, which is a Dremel 200. It's just a Dremel. It's got two settings. I'm going to use the low setting for this. I probably won't even touch the high setting ever. And then I've got a couple of bits for it. The bits I'm using are this little stone one. And then I've got this and this one. So on these shapes that I've got over here, I'll cut out the basic block shape as much as I can with this, and so you'll get most of this generic cutting around it. Maybe some of the angles, and then I'll come back through with this, and this is where I add a lot of the shape in the middle, and a lot of the character to it. And then all of these lines right here, all these lines are done with this sharp point that I've got, and then any of this other detail that you see all through here, I did with this stone right here. And you can see my style's kind of evolved just over the 4 holds that I've done quite a bit. So I think this is my favorite one right now. But that's what we're going to use. And then at the very end, we're going to drill our final hole. So we'll drill a 3/8 hole because all these bolts are 3/8 by 16ths. We're going to drill our hole with this bit, and then we're going to countersink it, for lack of a better term, with this wood bit. Okay, this is a 3/4 inch wood bit. Really, you just need something that the head of the screw will fit into, and countersink just fine. But I've got the 3/4 inch, and that seems to work okay. I've taken a regular spade bit, and I've sanded off or grinded off the corners right here. There's normally 2 points that stick out here to really cut the ring that this sinks down into, and I've gotten rid of them because I don't want that outer ring on my parts. So that's what I did this part right here with, as you can see. I recommend doing this particular process with a drill press. So if you can borrow a drill press from somebody or run over to somebody's house and use their drill press, I absolutely recommend you do that, because trying to line up not 1 but 2 drill bits on a perfectly straight hole is just almost impossible. So with like this one, it needs to be perpendicular to the floor, so that way you're not creating any undue stress on these points. And with this one, I tried to do it with the drill, and you can see it's out of place. I wish it had been a little bit farther up here. And I've had to kind of fight with the mold a little bit to try and clean up this hole down in here, because my drill bit just wasn't straight. It was really hard to keep that drill straight up and down while I was drilling it. So this is what we're going to use to sculpt our stuff with. Get some references, and here we go.
I'm going to start with I've got a block here, but I've got a thin block already that's flat on one side, so we're actually going to just use that. I like to keep at least I like to keep the ground surface that's going to bolt up against the wall as one of the flats, so the chances of me being able to sand it perfectly flat again are pretty slim. So I like to, if I look at a block, a fresh block, I'm going to try and carve inside of it. Like I'm going to cut it down to the size I want with the saw, but then I'm going to try and do all my shaping here, and I want to leave these as untouched as possible, because I know these are square, I know these are flat. So this is the surface I want to be laying on the drill press when I put the final hole through it, because I know this surface is good. So I'm going to try and do my shaping on the inside. To that effect, this edge right here is untouched. You can see some damage around the edges, but I don't care about that. This edge right here or this facing is flat. You can see here, this is where I cut it, so this is where I'm going to shape. Again, I'm trying to keep about this same size, and I'm actually looking for a kind of a crimp here. There's 2 holes I kind of want to make, and one's going to be a crimp with a little more positive, and the other one's going to be a much less positive, a negative hold per se. So I'm going to I'll go ahead and angle it right across here to cut it. Just cut it like that. Nothing crazy. I'm thinking about a 3-finger crimp. I don't really want to do quite a 4-finger. So with that in mind, I'm going to. I think I may actually have my fingers up on this edge here, since I got some damage down here. So I'm going to cut this out right here. Pretty easy to cut. I don't really need that edge to be as sharp as it is right there. Take those out. So right now we're looking at here. So if you're fresh to this, you kind of want to do I encourage you to do a quick drawing. A lot of these holds are based specifically on drawings I did a couple weeks ago. This one I kind of know what I want. I kind of already have the basis established for what I'm trying to develop, so I'm not too worried about concepting it right off the bat. But I would encourage you to have a drawing of what you want before you get going. So we're going to give ourselves a little bit of a positive edge here. So you can see where this is at. Now I'm just going to, doesn't need to be super positive. Now I'm just going to run it like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be all the way just amazing. It doesn't need to be lined up. This is kind of an art right here. Kind of just let it flow. So we got a rough shape. So right now I've already messed up because I cut on the back side of it. So you see how I did this? I wanted this to be my facing against the rock, and I've already cut this right here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set this aside for a second and try again here. So same thing. Just kind of shape it out. And since I know that this facing here is going against the wall, I want that positive edge. So we're going to try this again. And I have my positive edge. So now I can feel and I can kind of get on it. And I've got about a 3-finger crimp on it. This edge is a little bit less positive, but I'm okay with that because I'm probably going to end up sanding some of this away. And that looks okay. So now what I want this to do is I want this to fade back into the wall. Okay. So I'm going to just saw away some quick edges here around it, like so. This is really just a rough cut. So it's going to be like that. Still a little bit too much. So I want to come across like this. And that's a little bit better. I don't really want this edge here, so I'm going to cut that a bit more. And that looks better. So that's where we're at with that. And there's our nice positive crimp. It wouldn't be amazing, but I'm not looking for an amazing hold here. When I'm designing these holds, I kind of want them to be ones that I can learn on. I don't really want to make holds right now that I can easily climb. So I'm kind of doing this to create the holds that I don't have already at the gym. So this kind of looks nice, kind of like this. So it would bolt into the wall. My hole's going to be probably right about here. I've got about a 3-finger crimp. Everything kind of merges into the wall nicely right here. So that looks alright. I'm pretty happy with that. And it's about the same height as this, because I don't want to waste the silicone. I don't need there to be, if I were to do this one and this one together like I did previously, this one's a good 1/2 inch thicker than this one is. So I'm adding a 1/2 inch of silicone over the top of this surface area when it adds up to what? 2 or 3 square inches of material that I don't have to spend if I just did it all about the same height. So keep that in mind when we're doing this. So there's that one. And then I have this little more negative sloper here. So I want to blend this back like so. I just want to take this back. This is just a rough cut. There's nothing exciting going on here. I don't want to take that out too much more. So that looks alright. And that's really a crappy grip, which is fine. That's what I wanted. There just ain't a whole lot to hang on to there, quite frankly. I'm going to take this back a little bit more. Not a lot. see if I like the shape of it a bit. And that's kind of it. So the two of them together are kind of a nice little pocket if you had any holes that were that close, but we don't. On a volume you would though, so that's not a bad idea either. But that's kind of what I wanted. That's almost exactly what I was looking for. Kind of a pair, kind of a brother-sister pair here that's a positive and a negative. So here's our really rough cut blocks here. Alright, so now I'm going to get in with my sandpaper. I've got to kind of just fold it around. These sharp edges here will create sharp edges in your product, so you try and keep it rounded out as much as you possibly can. So roll it up a little bit like so. And we're just going to take the hard edges off of this. Does not take much. Do not overdo this. Does not take much to roll through this. And once you take it off, you can't get it back. So sand conservatively. All right. Feel those edges as you run your fingers over them. See how they feel as a climber. Are you going to want to put a lot of weight on those? Are you going to want to hang on that? I mean, obviously some of this crap I wouldn't want to hang on at all, but I mean it's a 511, so you're going to have to, but it's going to hurt your fingers if you hang on it, right? So I can just kind of scrape this down through here and create this little pocket here. Alright. This recesses a little bit, and I don't really want that, so I'm going to take this back a little bit more. Like so. Like that. Round that out a bit more. Don't really want that sharp edge as much as it is. Now I'm going to come back in with my brush. Clean that off. You can see how the light's hitting that foam, and you can see any hard edges. I can see an edge here. I can see an edge right there. And I'm okay with some of those edges being there, but the really hard corners, I don't want those to be there. So I'm going to come back in right here on this. Right there, and take care of that. I feel like I like that a bit more. This doesn't have to be quite, so right now it's kind of blocky, so I'm going to take some more out right here. I'll even get ballsy and do it with a saw. We're going to go right there. We'll do the same thing over here. Just making happy little rocks, right? Just going on. And so obviously we just created some hard lines with that, so we're going to take those out. Sand down that knob. There's a lot of different pervading theories out there about designing holds, and I am a novice. This is not actually really a hold theory as much as it is just a pushing point for you to be able to go know what you need and to create a hold. When you start talking about hold theory, again, people like Ian Powell, people like people that work at Kilter Grips or Escape Grips, or those are the guys that have got some experience in this field that can tell you about making grips and the theory behind it, what you're trying to accomplish. For me, as a novice, it makes sense to make grips that have multiple angles so that you could, like this one, if this was a bigger one, I could have a positive grip here, or it could be upside down. Anything can be an undercling at that point. If it's positive up here, it's positive this way. But it could be a sloper here this way as well. But I don't know, it depends. I also do some root setting at my gym as well, and when you have a piece that's got so many different angles that you can pull from, it becomes difficult to set a route that asks the problem that you want it to ask. If it's got so many different ways if you're trying to do a Gaston technique or a strong undercling technique, but the question to hold in hand can work just fine as a pinch, and it kind of defeats purpose. So I was wanting to use this in the same group, but this is actually just really too small. I'm going to waste a lot of silicone over the top of that, so I'll probably just throw that out for now. Or let's come down to this one here. So again, this is gonna be a lot more rounded out because this one is just really a sloper, less positive crimp kind of thing. So I want to keep as much of this edge as I can, like so. I want to keep this the angle it is, but everything else can just get smoothed out. All right. If you haven't done a lot of holes before, at this point you could just stop and drill your holes right now and call it a day. They're perfectly functional on a wall, and they'd be great. There'd be nothing wrong with them. People would be like, "Oh, hey, that's really cool." But I want to get a little more aggressive than that. I want to be a little more artistic with it, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to break out the Dremel and do some work on it.